My name is Chelsea Shammy Calder, and I am your session host today. And we have Lizzie Mabe with us, and she is going to be sharing Accelerating Productivity SAS Code Assistant. So we're happy you're here for this. I will hand it over to Lizzie.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you all so much for attending this session. My name is Lizzie Mabe, and I'm a data scientist with the Global Technology Practice at SAS. And I'm so excited to be here at SAS Innovate to talk to you all about productivity. Productivity has been a major theme of the year for SAS, with the Futurum study coming out that we're so proud of at SAS, which found that data and AI teams are over 4 times more productive using SAS Viya than other data and AI platforms. So productivity has been and will continue to be the center of the conversation at Innovate this year. But with SAS Viya, a platform that is so geared toward productivity, how can we take advantage of generative AI capabilities to accelerate that productivity even further? So today I'm here to talk about, and more importantly, show you our generative AI-driven SAS Code Assistant. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm hoping to answer 3 questions. The first, what is SAS Viya Copilot? How are we incorporating generative AI into our software to make it easier and faster to use? Second, how can I use SAS Viya Copilot to assist with writing SAS code? I'll introduce our SAS Code Assistant and talk you through its 3 very exciting features. Finally, the question of the hour, how can I use SAS Code Assistants to make me more productive? I'll walk through an end-to-end example where I'll explore some data, I'll create some visualizations, I'll create a model, all without writing any code. So SAS Code Assistant will do it all for me. I'll also go through a code explanation example where I'll show how we can create concise summaries of existing SAS code and accelerate the documentation process by adding comments. So a lot of very exciting things await. But before I dive into that, I wanted to zoom out a little bit and talk about SAS Viya more generally. Because when we're talking about these productivity gains, what exactly is it that we're becoming more productive doing? So this is a graphic that you might have seen before, and I can almost guarantee you're going to see it again before the conference is over, because this is what we do at SAS. It's called the Analytics and AI Lifecycle, and it describes the entire process of working with data, from the very beginning, when you first have a question about your data, to the very end, when you take your insights and your results and you translate them into business decisions. So SAS Viya is an integrated, unified platform that encapsulates this entire process. So whether you want to do your ETL, create dashboards, tune your models, or build intelligent decisions, SAS Viya does it all. So in this already very unified and productive platform, how can we incorporate generative AI to make this process even faster? How does SAS Viya Copilot fit into all of this? So what SAS Viya Copilot does is it sits on top of this process. It allows you to do each of these tasks conversationally, taking advantage of generative AI. This lowers the barrier of entry to using our software. So anybody can jump in and immediately start using it. Let's talk a little bit more about SAS Viya Copilot. SAS Viya Copilot is an AI agent that is embedded directly into the SAS Viya platform. So this allows users a more accessible and intuitive way of working with the software. For example, instead of navigating the information governance page, you can just ask SAS Viya Copilot to check your data quality for you. Instead of adding a model explanation node to your Model Studio pipeline, just ask Copilot to explain what this model means. And finally, for the purposes of this demonstration today, instead of writing all your SAS code yourself, just ask SAS Viya Copilot to generate your code for you. This brings us to our SAS Viya Copilot SAS Code Assistant. Code Assistant is a tool that has 3 main features: generating code, explaining code, and adding comments. In the case of generating code, we can input a prompt written in plain English in the form of a SAS comment, and it will return a suggestion for code generated based off of that comment, as well as any additional context of the session. It does so using a small language model that's been fine-tuned based off of our own SAS documentation and examples. So no one knows how to code in SAS better than SAS. So by using our own documentation and our own examples, we're able to ensure that our results are as reliable and accurate as possible. Once we have our suggestion from the Copilot, it will return that code directly into the editor window, and you can run it as if you've written it yourself, saving you the hassle of having to go back and forth between a different application. It's all done under one interface. So this makes us more productive because we can spend less time thinking about the specific syntax and the nitty-gritty of our code and think more big picture about what we want our code to accomplish and what results we need. In addition to code generation, we can also use the Code Assistant to explain code and add comments. So the input for both of these features is existing SAS code. Maybe you have a backlog of SAS code that you need to get up to speed on. Maybe you have a SAS program that was written by somebody who left the company 5 years ago, and now you need to know what it does. Maybe you even wrote the code yourself, forgot to comment it, and now you've completely forgotten what that code does. That happens to me all the time, and SAS Code Assistant can help. With explaining code, you can simply highlight the code that you'd like to explain, and it will return a concise summary of what that code is doing in the conversation window. Similarly to add comments, you can simply highlight the section that you'd like to add comments to, and it will add comments directly into the editor window in the form of inline comments. So both of these things can make us a lot more productive when documenting our code and when understanding code that we haven't seen before. So I could continue talking all day about these features and how awesome they are, but I think we'd have a lot more fun if I showed you. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my demo environment. So I've opened SAS Viya Workbench, and I opened a VS Code workbench. The reason I use VS Code is because that is where Copilot is currently available as a VS Code extension. So on the left pane, we see our SAS libraries. This is likely familiar to SAS coders. And underneath that, we see the Copilot chat. So this is the new part. And this is where we're going to see a record of the prompts that we've made and the suggestions that the Copilot has returned. So I'm going to go through an example. I'm going to start by reading in my data. I could use a Copilot for this, but for the sake of demonstration, I wanted to ensure this step went smoothly, so we have data to work with. I'm going to be using a home equity data set containing customer information and whether or not they defaulted on a loan. And so I'm interested in finding out some more information about my customers. So I want to see features that these customers have, and then see what factors impact the probability of a customer defaulting on their loan. So I want to start by looking at my data and getting a sense of what it looks like. So I'll ask my Copilot to print the first 10 rows of the data. I highlight this, and we see our 3 prompts come up where we can query the tool. We can add comments, explain, and in this case, I'd like to generate code. I select that. On the left pane, we see the generate code prompt that I've just made. We see the suggestion that the Copilot's returned. And we also see the suggestion directly under that comment in gray. If I'm not happy with this, I can just click off and try it again. That's what's nice about generative AI, is it might have a different suggestion if you're not happy with the first one. But I'm happy with this, so I'm going to go ahead and click accept. And now we see that it is in the editor window, just as if I've written it myself, and I can run it. Ooh. I don't know why that didn't run. Where? I do not know where. Oh, there we go. Nope, that is not right. Alrighty, I don't know why my results are not coming up, but I'm going to keep showing the Copilot. So when you run this, it'll print the first 10 rows of the data. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but at least the Copilot is working, so we can see that in action. I'm going to go ahead and try to rename the bad variable to default. So had we opened the data set, we could see that our target is called bad, and that's not a very descriptive title. So we'd like to retitle it to default. So I'm going to query the Copilot to do that for me. Generate that code and see it returns a suggestion. So it's chosen the correct data set that I specified, and it's chosen the correct syntax to rename the variable bad to default. In addition, I'm interested in seeing the frequencies of that default variable. So I'll query the Copilot once again to do that. I'll generate that code, click accept, and we see that it chose the correct procedure, which was procfreq. It chose the data set that I specified as well as the variable. One thing that's nice about this is that it handles the syntax for me. So, for example, I always forget that procfreq uses the keyword tables, while procmeans uses the keyword var. And so in this case, I didn't have to think about any of that. I just had the Copilot handle the syntax for me, and I got to think about the more important stuff, which is the results that I wanted. Additionally, I'd like to see some more information about what amounts people are requesting for their loans. So I'd like to see a distribution of this data. For that, I can request that the Copilot return a histogram. So I'll ask it to return this histogram and generate code. It returns proc univariate, which is going to give some summary statistics, and it returns the histogram keyword, which will, if I could run it, would return a histogram. Up top, you also see this 1 out of 2 written here. And so when the Copilot isn't entirely confident in the results, it'll give you a second option. So if you're not happy with it, you can look at the second one and see what it returns. So in this case, it's given an option to use proc univariate and also an option to use sgplot. So in the case that I wanted some more summary statistics, I would use the proc univariate. In the case that I wanted fewer, I would use sgplot. So in this case, I want to use proc univariate to get some more information about the loans that my customers are requesting. Finally, I'm interested in creating a model. I'd like to see some of the factors that impact whether or not a customer is going to default on a loan. So for this, I'll query the Copilot by requesting the type of model I'd like. That's the logistic regression model. I'll specify the data set. I'll specify the target, and then the predictors I'd like to use. I can highlight this entire thing, select generate code, and we see that it returns a proc logistic step. It chooses the correct data set, chooses the target that I specified. It also chooses an event. So this isn't something that I specified in my request, but this identifies that I might be interested in targeting whether or not somebody will default on a loan, not whether or not somebody will not. So this is something that is identified that I didn't even have to include in my prompt. It also chooses the correct predictors that I specified. And if I ran this, I would be able to see what factors impact whether or not somebody's going to default on a loan. So we've gone through this example. Unfortunately, I couldn't run it, but you get the idea of how we can generate code without having to write the code ourselves. I also wanted to show, in addition to that, how we can use the explanation and the comment addition features. So I'll switch over. In this case, I've written a very short SAS program. I tried to use a variety of data step, proc SQL, proc contents. I did some plotting and created a model. And I want to use Copilot to understand what this code is doing without having to go step by step and decode it myself. So to do this, I'll highlight the entire thing and click Explain. In the left pane over here, we'll return a summary. And this will return a concise summary of what the code is doing. So in this case, we are reading in a data set. We're displaying the contents. We're creating a scatter plot and a linear regression analysis. Finally, this code is not very well commented, so I'd like to add some comments. I'll select that. And see it returns inline comments, saving you the hassle of having to go step by step and write comments yourself. It's worth noting that everything that the Copilot generates can be changed. So I'll often use this as a baseline or a first draft. So especially when it comes to writing comments, we all have different styles, but this does a really good first pass of going through and explaining what each step is doing. Similarly with code generation, I can make any edits I'd like to, but it provides a really great skeleton to then work off of to customize your code however you'd like. So we've gone through an example end-to-end with code generation. We've also seen how we can explain and add comments to our code. And so before I end the session, I wanted to point out two booths out here that you can go to. The first is the SAS Viya Copilot booth. So some of the people who created these features will be out there, and they can tell you about code assistance. They can also tell you about additional features that are coming to SAS Viya, including a Model Studio Copilot, where you can add explanations of nodes and suggested next nodes. So definitely go out and talk to them about that. I also wanted to point out the try zone. So there we're going to have laptops set up with Workbench where you can go in and try out SAS Viya Copilot yourself. So I'll have these exercises in addition to a couple other ones. So that's where I'm going to be camped out for the next couple days. So please feel free to find me over there. I'm happy to talk to you more about SAS Viya Copilot and SAS Code Assistance. But with that, I want to turn it over and ask for if anybody has any questions. Yes, hi. I think we have a mic, sorry.
Yeah, I feel this system is very helpful in the model validation and auditing field. I just don't know kind of how good or how accurate it can explain. Because usually, our process will be more complex than this one. We will include like many macros and then thousands of lines.
Mm-hmm.
So can it work on those complex processes?
Yeah, this was a very, very simple example. I've seen it work on much, much longer SAS programs that definitely include macros. I have some examples of those over there if you want to test the explain feature. So that was definitely a very simple example, but we've gotten really good feedback from people who have macros and more complicated SAS programs.
Second quick question
Mm-hmm.
is, if I don't migrate to Viya, but I need this tool, can I only license for this feature?
I'm not sure if you can only license for the feature, but it currently requires a Viya connection.
I see.
Yeah.
Got it.
But feel free to talk to them at the Copilot booth about that.
If I use SAS EG, can I still have this Copilot feature, or this is just for the Workbench?
So currently it is just in VS Code, so that's in Workbench, but we do plan to have it in other places where you can code in SAS, as long as you do have that Viya connection.
So you mean I have a VS Code, I can run Python, and you mean we can also write code in SAS code in VS Code?
Yes, correct.
Oh, this is totally new to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if I don't have SAS Viya Workbench but VS Studio Code, then can I use this as well?
If you don't have VS Code, you said?
I have VS Code, but not Workbench.
Yes, you can use it in VS Code without Workbench. It's just a VS Code extension, so as long as you have an API key and that Viya connection, you can use it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Thank you all so much for attending the session. I appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of Innovate.